What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to the U.S.S. CERRITOS-Tour. I'm CERRITOS, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. If you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me and supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. Everybody that takes time to watch these videos, you all are awesome. Today we're going to be talking about the build and why I made some of the decisions I made, and just kind of going through the ship. One thing that I do want to point out that was kind of difficult, and I built the and what I'm talking about is the windows. I had built these with the purpose that I was going to do something like this similar on the Enterprise D. There was actually a lot of stuff like that on the CERRITOS. Those of you that have been with me through the course of this tutorial know that one of the main reasons why I decided to do the CERRITOS, on top of the fact that it was my #1 request at the time, was that it was a next-gen era ship, and I felt that it was close enough to the Enterprise D that I could learn a thing or two from it. And I was able to learn several things, but I feel like a lot of it I'm not going to be able to directly transition over in the Enterprise D. I'll have to end up doing something a little bit different. Now, for those of you that are hoping to get a sneak peek at the Enterprise D, you probably noticed that I have my back currently to the Enterprise D on purpose. The next time you all will see the Enterprise D is when we start the tour. She's not ready yet, so if you want to get your sneak peek, be sure to check out Enterprise D teaser. I promise she will be worth the wait, and I'm really looking forward to that starting. I have to get on this weekend and get some work done on the Enterprise D. I have a little bit more work to do on the underside of the saucer. I have to fix one part on it, and then I have to close in the upper top of it. I'm hoping to get that done this weekend, and then I have to do some more detailing on the outside. We're gonna have to play it by ears. I'm not trying to rush the ship. One of my rules with shipbuilding is that the more you rush, the more mistakes you're likely to make. And with a ship of that size, it's really important just to take your time with it, just for the sake of not having to retread and rebuild the same sections over and over again because you rush through it. But yeah, so we're going to get back into the CERRITOS. One of the things that was actually kind of difficult that I really wasn't expecting was actually the lip of the ship. It's slightly thinner than what I intended it to be. I think really what I should have maybe have done with the CERRITOS is made it a little bit bigger in the saucer section, and that would have fixed that problem, because that dark gap in between, there should have been actually 3 rings. So that was a compromise that I made at the time, because I had already gotten so much done on the build. And that's going to be one thing too, that when you build these ships, especially when you're building something for the first time, mistakes inevitably are going to happen. That's why, like, when I say I built the Disco Enterprise, that was like the best of both worlds, because you all got the benefit of me building 4 other Constitution classes before that one. So that's really one of the reasons why that build came out so well. Not that the CERRITOS didn't come out well, but I'm going to be talking about all that stuff, the good stuff and the bad. I'm my own worst critic in that regard. But there were a lot of other things that I was actually really happy with how it turned out, like the lower side of the saucer. I think it came out fantastic, even the upper side, but the lower side is about spot on where it's supposed to be, and I love how I have the impulse engines. They're tucked away right underneath the saucer just like they should be. And one of the other things I want to talk about is this area right in here. This whole gray piece that's connected to the bridge. This was a pain to build. It took a lot of trial and error, trying a couple of things off camera to even get to this point. And that's one of the things on Minecraft that you'll notice, that sometimes things don't always transition from the real world or an animated world into Minecraft all that well, and you kind of have to make tweaks and changes in between. I think this area would have looked a little bit better if we had colored concrete half slabs that I could have blended in with it. It would have been perfect. But I thought that the white looked better than the gray blocks that were available to me. So that was one of the differences between the two. And of course, also you see we've got the cyan phaser banks, and then we've even got the areas here for the escape pods. Now, the escape pods are just facades, and you can get away with stuff like that on here, you know. But I wanted to make a point that they would be here. One thing that I did not do in the tutorial, and I'm surprised nobody noticed it, was that the NCC registration. You notice that does not say Cerritos above it. There's actually a reason why I decided to do this. And this was one of the reasons, again, why I said I should have made the ship just slightly bigger, was because when I tested this out off camera, where it said the combination of the NCC and U.S.S. Cerritos was massive and way bigger than what it should be. And believe it or not, this is actually as small as I could make it because of the fact that I was using 5s and 6s. If there were different numbers in there, what I could have made them a little bit smaller, like for example, NCC 1701, because of those numbers and the shape that they are, I could have made them half the size of what they are right here. But I still, I wanted to make a point. I was like, well, you know, I can get away with it not saying U.S.S. Cerritos, I think. But I need to have it with the registration at least somewhere on the ship. That's very important. And one of the reasons why I have it here is because, again, this is actually where it is on the ship. And I'm not being vulgar by saying this. This is what the creators have said about it. They put it there in reference of a tramp stamp. So take that for what it is, but that's just one of the things on the Cerritos. It was made to be a comedic ship, and there's just a lot of cool features about it as well. It's also made to be a beloved ship, and I totally agree with that. Like the whole look of the ship, I really when I first saw it, I was like, that's the dumbest design I've ever seen. But after watching season 1 of Lower Decks, I fell in love with this ship a lot, and it's a really cool ship. I love how the pylons are angled. They remind me of the pylons on the Enterprise A or Enterprise Refit. And what are some other things I added on here that I really liked? The engines. Oh, you saw the Enterprise D there. Don't look at it. It's not ready. The engines came out pretty good. I wasn't completely satisfied with the front end of them, but I think this was a good compromise. They more or less, they look pretty close to what they should have been. And then you can even see I added the yellow pinstripes going along here with the green light here in the front, just like it is on the show. And I didn't show this in the tutorial, but if this was something that you wanted to add on your ship, I'm going to stop right here for a second so you can pause it. So if you want to add this as well to see where you need to put this on your ship, and the spacing on the dot up front is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then there's a gap, and then I believe this strip is 15 long. Well, I'll count it out just so you have that dimensions on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Okay, so it was 10 more than what I said, because, yeah, I did actually, now I recall, I made it a little bit longer. Originally, it was 15 long, but I wasn't happy with the exact length of it. Trying to think of what else, some other things that I can point out on the outside of the ship that I was really happy with. Has these very cool gray struts, bars on the side. It's kind of unique to the Cerritos, and the bridge wasn't necessarily super hard to do, but I spent a little bit of time on it. You know, for those of you that did the tutorial with me, I went back I think 2 times and I worked on the outside of the bridge just to get to this point, and it looks pretty good. You know, it looks pretty close to the Cerritos. I think the one liberty that I took with it was adding the windows up top so you could actually see outside the ship. But I mean, there's 1 or 2 exceptions I took, but pretty much I stayed pretty true to how this thing is supposed to look on the show. I just went on Google and I typed in U.S.S. Cerritos 3D model, and that's what I used during the course of this build to get in all that detail. One of the other things I really loved that came out on this ship was the Deflector Dish. I really thought I was going to be able to use this when I was building, or at least the template for this when I was building the Enterprise D, But when we get into that, you'll see that it's a monster, and it's literally so much bigger than this area, to the point that I couldn't use this at all. And there are different shapes too. But one of the things I do like was that directly above the deflector dish is our torpedo base. And this was something that I just took an educated guess on, because I rewatched some episodes of Lower Deck, and I could be wrong, but I don't recall them ever firing torpedoes. And if they did, I didn't catch it and see where they were coming from. So I looked at I just went on Google again. I typed in U.S.S. Cerritos. I just started going through screenshots and looking through as many screenshots as I could, specifically of this lower section of the hull. And from what I can tell, this is where it looks like the torpedo bays are. But don't quote me on that. This was just an educated guess. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of most of the stuff I want to call out on the outside of the ship. I do also love how the front bars, or the front piece of the engine, kind of fits inside the back piece. Looks pretty good. We're going to be making our way in the inside of the ship here. We're going to start with the lower hull, and then we're going to pop up into the into the saucer section from the deflector dish. Now, you can see that I have the facades here on each side for the turbo lifts, for those of you that want to throw in your command block so you can just teleport up and down. I unfortunately did not have enough time to learn how to use the command block to get that in here, but I at least wanted to build the ship out because somebody had suggested it. So for those of you that do want to do that, you'll be able to teleport from your lower hull to your upper hull. And yeah, you know, this isn't like a super big room. Really, the whole purpose of this was just pretty much to house the deflector control room. I think there were a couple of decks that were on the show, but since we scaled this down a little bit, I think this kind of fits. It doesn't look bad at all, and I just kind of, you know, threw a room together based off of the shape that I had to go with, and I didn't necessarily use any screenshots from Lower Decks because I don't think they ever showed this room. So I kind of did like a hodgepodge of past ships that I've built, and I just typed in, I think I used Enterprise D deflector control room as a loose reference, but I really just kind of threw this room together. And of course, you see we have the grid pixel pack in here for the control panels, just to bring the room to life a little bit more. It looks so awesome. I really like how that came out. So we're going to make our way now into the shuttle bay. Now, one thing I think is very cool about the Cerritos has two shuttle bays, both on opposite sides of the ship, but they lead into the same area. And this is actually the biggest shuttle bay I have ever made on Minecraft. I was actually really happy with how this room came out. One thing I did not do, and I will probably have to do it at some point, is when I added the NCC, it's coming down now into our shuttle bay. What I would probably have to do to fix that, and for those of you that do the same thing and you have this problem, I could show you what to do in today's episode without actually doing it. We would just take off these half slabs, and this row of concrete, we bring that all the way back, so it would cover up the registration numbers coming down in here. And then what we would have to do at that point is, I think if you want to keep your Starfleet logo, we're going to have to move that down by one block in order to keep being able to see the whole shape of it. But I didn't get a chance to do that for the tutorial. But I think all things considered, this room, I mean, it looks pretty awesome. I loosely used the Enterprise D as a reference when I built this room, and I also used some screenshots of Lower Decks. And this entryway point right here, this was pretty much like the main reference that I had for the Cerritos, and everything else past that was more or less Enterprise D, and I just kind of fused them together. And that's stuff that you can do on here and totally get away with, because when you're building ships on Minecraft, you're going to run into this problem yourself, where you either, whatever reference material you're looking at, in this case is a screenshot, you're only seeing it from one angle. So it's like, okay, I know what this part right here looks like, but how does it look like on the left? How does it look like on the right? And how does it look behind me? So this is where I'm talking about, where you have to fill in those gaps. Sometimes, you know, we're lucky enough where there's enough seasons, or like with the U.S.S. Enterprise, the original one, Enterprise that was captained by Captain Kirk. There's been more than one interpretation of it, so there's so much of that interior that you can use, that you can kind of morph everything together to get like a more complete ship. Whereas this one, we kind of had to use Enterprise D as a reference for a lot of things, which isn't a bad thing, because I definitely think that it fits the era, and it also helps to at least prep us in building the Enterprise D. You can see that we've got our Shuttle Bay storage. This one's actually the biggest one. I was going to make this a storage room or a cargo room, but I decided to convert these back rooms into basically like the Shuttle Bay parking garages. And we did that tutorial also, and then it came out pretty good. Very basic shuttle, but we kind of had to go with basic just based off the size of it. But all things considered, I'm pretty happy with it. Another thing that I love about this ship is that from the Shuttle Bay alone, there's 1, 2, 3 points of entry into our ship. Go down the right, that will bring us down into the right side of the saucer, going all the way around. The middle, that brings us into engineering, and the left side will bring us on the left side of the ship. So we're going to go down the middle here. You see that if I go straight down, that'll bring us into engineering. But just so you can see, go down the left. We can go into the Shuttle Bay control room if we go upstairs, and this hallway will take us down the left side of the ship, down the outer circular corridor. If we come back this way, it'll bring us right back out into the Shuttle Bay. I should say that's actually the inner ring corridor right here, but there's also a connection to the outer ring corridor. So multiple points of entry to the Shuttle Bay, which is very convenient. We're going to stick with the Shuttle Bay right now and try to show off all this stuff together as much as I can. So now we're in the Shuttle Bay control room, which is pretty big. Definitely the biggest Shuttle Bay control room that I've made on any ship, but I think it came out fantastic for what it is. You see, I was kind of pressed for space, so I had to use carpeting to differentiate in color, because if we went down any more right here, we would actually be in the corridor that we were just in a moment ago. So you have a couple of control panels here that you can access, and the left and right side are actually exactly identical, but you can see down into the Shuttle Bay, which looks pretty cool. And I didn't necessarily reference anything in building this room. I just used excuse me, I just used the space that I had available to me. And I saw that the Enterprise D had a massive Shuttle Bay control room. I was like, well, you know, I think I can do that, and I think I can maybe build that on or right next to, kind of above where the hallway is, and it just kind of worked out. It's not always going to work out that way, but sometimes you can just use the space that you have is kind of what I'm getting at, and that's kind of what ended up happening here. So we're going to come back down, and we're go down our Shuttle Bay Corridor. Is kind of what I've been calling this long straightaway hallway that kind of goes along the length of it. We're going to make our way into engineering. One of the cool things that I liked about this room, and this was just kind of my addition, was that I wanted to kind of like add 1 or 2 elements from the Enterprise D into engineering. And one of them was that when you walked into engineering on the Enterprise D, you kind of had like this first separate room and a desk that they did a lot of work on. Now, those of you that did the tutorial with me, you see that I didn't do the desk because we tried, but it just ended up being too clunky and too in the way, so I got rid of it, and we just have the side consoles. But this room itself, I definitely wanted to have it here because it's going to help to make it feel like a next generation era ship, because you're like, okay, I remember that from the U.S.S. Enterprise D, you know, and it'll kind of like to take you back to that time. So that's kind of like my reasoning on why I decided to do that. I actually had a lot of problems with this section of the ship because for the life of me, I swear that this is where the warp core is located, the dead center of the ship. But that ended up posing a ton of problems because basically the warp core and the turbo the turbo lifts going up in the bridge were encompassing the same space. This is a problem that you can run into when you're trying to build a fictional ship in real life, that they may not have thought all of this stuff out when they were building these rooms. They just kind of threw it together and they're like, well, a turbo lift can go in any direction, so it can just whiz around this thing, you never know it. Okay, well, that's cool, but where are those tubes coming from, you know? So what I ultimately had to do here was basically I turned the warp core into a facade so that the turbo lifts are actually built into it. Was not my first choice, and I don't know if I would necessarily ever do something like this again, but this was just one of those things where I really didn't have any other choice. And I really wanted to have the warp core in the center of the ship based on what I could see with the blueprints, because from what I could see, it looked like it was dead center of the saucer section. So that's just what I went with, and I think it works out pretty good, because if it turned out that this was in the lower hull, I do not think I would have been able to build out the same scale room, and we would have been completely sacrificing the deflector control room. So it kind of worked out that way. But this was another room where, you know, I kind of had to take liberties with the sides and fill in the gaps. And I just kind of trusted my instincts, you know, using past builds as experience, and using the room that I had. I started with the circle, and I just started working off of that. There's not that much more I can talk about with this room. You notice that there's really not that much in it, and I did that on purpose, because when you go on the Enterprise D, yeah, you can see like a couple of consoles to the left, but in engineering, all you see is the warp core. That's it. And it was the same thing on the original Enterprise A. There was very few mechanical parts that were actually outside the walls. Usually when they would be working on something, they'd have to take off a bulkhead to the side, you know, from one of the corridors, and they'd be working on something, but it was inside the walls, is what I'm getting at. All the technology was hidden in the walls, kind of like your electrical wiring. They've become so advanced in the future that all this stuff is just kind of built into the ship, you know? But I still, like, even with the minimalistic approach that I went with, I decided to grab these two things, and I've got duplicates on both sides, and I directly stole them from what I did on my Disco-Air Enterprise. I just changed the color of them a little bit and tweaked the glass, and you'd be surprised when you can do something like that. It looks totally different, but it's actually a very similar design. I just wanted at least one other mechanical looking part in engineering, just to make it look a little bit more like engineering, I guess. I don't know, let me know what you think about that in the comments. But we're going to make our way down. Let's see, we're going to go down the left side of the ship here, and this is going to bring us into general crew quarters. So if you were on the Cerritos and you were not an officer, you have gotten the short end of the stick. You better hope that radiation is not emitting from the warp core, because if it is, general crew quarters is wrapped around engineering. So that's just kind of the way it is on this one. And I used reference pictures when building this. I tried to stay as close as I could to how it looked, but I tweaked my room. As opposed to it being in a circle, I had mine going on a grid. But I think for what it is, it looks like it's a pretty cool looking general crew quarters. Definitely houses the maximum number of crewmen that you can have that I've done on any ship in the past. And it also looks very next gen. So we're going to go back down the side that we came out of, the left side, because there's a few things to show today. This ship isn't as fleshed out as my Enterprise A, but there really wasn't that much stuff to show, or that they showed, so a lot of the stuff I had to wing it, and even then, you know, there's still a lot of the ship that was just not filled in. Now you can see right here, these are the facades for the turbo lifts, and let me make sure, yeah, I have a gray block right there. I'll delete the middle one so you can actually go in here, and I built it out. So those of you that want to use the command block, you do it here. And there's another one here, and then also on the other side of the ship. If we go down this corridor to the right, it's not exactly identical, but the placement of the turbo lift facades are identical in where they are. That's another thing that you can do, just to get that extra little bit of detail in your ship. Accuracy matters, and attention to detail matter. So we're going to move along here. I'm going to try not to blow this episode up into like a 45-minute episode, but there's some stuff to show, and I would love the opportunity here to showcase this. Before we go into the transporter room, I'm going to show a room that this was supposed to be the last episode on the Cerritos, and I was deleting video screen captures that I had done, and I accidentally deleted this room on accident. And it's not really a big deal. It's just the lounge on the Cerritos, and I think it'll be relatively easy to build, but I tried to kind of stay close as I could to how it looked on the show, but it's not nearly as big. Really, if I wanted to make it closer to what it was in the show, this wall would have to be bigger, and the room would have to wrap around this bar area. But all things considered, I don't think this room came out bad at all. I think it looks pretty good, and I used the paneling from the corridors here to kind of simulate windows to look outside, even though we're not technically on the outside of the ship. I think we can get away with it. I don't think it's a big deal. And of course, we've got our seating area, and then we've got our bar area here. Definitely a very clean lounge. Alright. So now we're going to make our way in one of my favorite rooms on the ship, the transporter room. This is my first attempt at a next generation era transporter room, and I think it came out pretty good. There might be one or two changes that I make to this when we build it on the Enterprise D, but I think it's probably going to look pretty close. May not be identical, but it'll be close. And this design that I've been doing for the transporter rooms, I really adopted this from my Enterprise A. Once I figured out how to build out transporter room in there, I just pretty much have converted that basic build to the Disco era Enterprise and now the Cerritos, and I just kind of changed the color palette on it, and you can totally get away with it. There are one or two minor things that I changed, but overall, I think when you look at this, definitely screams next generation. I did look online, and that was another room that I could not find for the life of me. I swear that on season 1 of Lower Decks that they did not use a transporter room even once. But when it comes to stuff like that, you just use what you got. You can see here we kind of got like a control panel here, so you can transport your passengers or crewmen or prisoners, whatever the case may be. One of the things that it happened is that there is a lot of space on this ship, and part of that was that because originally I was going to build out other crew quarters, but I really just didn't have that many people asking for it, so I never really finished this up. But they did drop the trailer for the teaser for Season 2 of Lower Decks If I get enough people asking me if they show stuff on the Cerritos in Season 2 that's worthwhile, maybe we'll revisit it and do like a Season 2 of a build. It'll be the first one. I don't want to promise it'll happen, but you never know. We've got room on the Cerritos to add stuff is what I'm getting at. But I think it's going to be, this isn't even a cop-out, because to be honest with you, you're never going to find a ship that's fully fleshed out, and if you are, they've taken so many liberties with it to the point that it's not necessarily staying true to it. I didn't necessarily want to do that. I wanted to provide content that people wanted to see. So, and I do this with every one of my tutorials. I always ask the community what they want to see while I'm working on it, so I can try to provide that content to you. But yeah, I don't think that there was a point in really going out past the episodes that we did. I think we kind of got to a point where the Cerritos was done. We did everything that we set out to do. One of the things I will admit that I was not happy with, I think they look janky, I don't like them, is the circular corridors. I know someone's going to be in the comment section like, no, you're just being hard on yourself, but I'm telling you, they look janky. I don't like them, and that's something that when we do the Enterprise D, the corridors are going to come out different. What I'm ultimately going to have to do is the circular corridors. I'm going to have to take the design on what I did for the circular corridors on the Disco Era Enterprise, which is also the same design for the Enterprise A, and just change the color palette on them. Because while I think that the shape of it was what it was supposed to be, it just doesn't look right. And I don't know, it just looks off to me, so I don't like them. But I didn't necessarily have enough time to go in and redo them. One thing I could have done too that would have helped me with room on the lip of the saucer, and this is just something that I know now after building the Cerritos, was that I think I would have had one circular corridor on this ship. And maybe moved it just a little bit further back, maybe to like this point right here, or not necessarily where the second one is, kind of like in the middle between the two. So this way I have more room in the front to build out larger rooms and do whatever I need to do. But it's just one of those things, you know, you live and you learn, and if we ever revisit the Cerritos or rebuild it, you know, I've learned a lot from doing this tutorial, and hopefully you have too, because that's definitely one of the things in doing these tutorials. The whole point is to learn something. So hopefully, those of you that built this ship with me, hopefully you learned a thing or two and had a little bit of fun in the process. This is one of the crew quarters that I made, which was just a basic template. I don't know if this would be classified as a captain's quarters, because on Next Gen, like pretty much like everyone's quarters was like a captain's quarters. They just had like big luxurious rooms, at least if you're an officer anyway, but they also had the smaller general crew quarters too. And this was just kind of a template to see how it will come out based on what I can do. And you can see like we've got our bathroom here with our shower, and then we've got our main bedroom with a work desk and console. This is supposed to be like the living room. You can sit down here and watch some TV. But I was kind of limited here because I didn't have a ton of space to work with, and I was trying to use this limited space to build out this room as much as I could. But I can already tell you right now, we're not going to have that problem with Enterprise D. This thing, Enterprise D, is going to be massive. So we're going to make our way now. One of the things I wanted to test out here too was building out holodecks. I think this is a holodeck when it's off. I think this actually looks awesome, but I think this room would have benefited from being a little bit bigger, but we just didn't have any more room to work with. I made this thing as big as I possibly could, but I think if I had maybe like 2 or 3 more rows of blocks going upward, I think it would have been maybe a little bit more appropriate. But it doesn't look bad, and I think when you walk in here, there's probably no question like, oh, like he's walking into a holodeck. And what I also wanted to do, even though I didn't really spend a ton of time with it, I wanted to go into a holodeck that was activated. Now, I might end up doing something more elaborate on the Enterprise D. I may end up like building out like a bigger room or something. I don't know. because there's a lot that you can do with an activated holodeck. Pretty much whatever whatever you can think of, you can probably do it. Alright, we're going to go down. If we go straight back, that will bring us back to the engineering, the corridors that go up to the bridge, but we're not ready to go up there just yet. We're going to go down the left side of the inner circular corridor. And we're going to pop a left and then a right. And this is going to bring us into cargo room, which was a request. I had to take a ton of liberties with this room, and it just kind of is what it is. That was another thing too on why I should have just done one circular corridor, because I didn't realize it until I actually got inside the ship building, was that I really didn't have a lot of room to work with. I would have, again, adjusted where I put the corridor, and then I would have maybe made the ship slightly bigger, just a little bit bigger, to do everything I wanted to do. So I really, I went online and, I found screenshots of what the cargo room looked like for the Cerritos, but because of my restrictions in the room, the size of it, I couldn't really use the screenshots at all. I really just had to go with the shape of the room, and then I added a kind of like an industrial cargo transport, or teleporter I should say, and then to the right we've actually got our cargo boxes. This is probably my least favorite room on the ship, I'm not gonna lie. And with an exception of the cargo transport or teleporter, it looks pretty good. Other than that, I don't know. I tried my best with the room, but that's gonna happen sometimes. It's not always gonna be fantastic. Now, one of the rooms we're about to go into, the medical bay, I was shocked with how well this room came out. I had a screenshot for the left side of the room right here, and I just winged everything else, and you get lucky in Minecraft sometimes, or maybe it's not lucky. Maybe, I am getting to a point where I'm building pretty good once I have a solid idea in my head and I have the space to do it. But I was really happy with how the medical bay turned out. It looks super futuristic. It looks very similar to the screenshot that I used for the Cerritos medical bay. And you see we've got the beds here that kind of look like they're supposed to slide in to a thing behind it where you can do a scan, which I think is pretty gnarly. And then we've got our computer consoles kind of going down the right here, just to give some extra life to the room. You go in this other room right here, this is kind of like office for the doctor. It doesn't necessarily need to be a big room, and I couldn't even take this wall down right here, because if I would have taken that wall down, then we'd be in one of the circular corridors. But it doesn't look bad. And then going straight back, same deal here. Just in this corner right here, we've got the circular corridor, and it doesn't look bad. I just kind of made it work. But we've got a quarantine or decontamination room. Ever since they added that, on Star Trek Enterprise, every ship that I've done, I've ended up doing a decontamination quarantine room, because I loved that show. That was it went way before its time, I think. I would have loved if that would be a show for them to bring back, maybe do a couple of seasons of. But I know that it wasn't a super popular show, but I've seen a lot of people give it a lot of love. But again, that's why I added this room here, just kind of like a little shout out to the NX-01. Alright. Not that much else, if anything, to show on the lower saucer section. It's like I said, going along the ring here, I really didn't fill in a lot of this. And we'll see. We'll see what happens with Season 2 of Lower Decks. If they do some stuff on there worthwhile, then I get people asking me to revisit it, then I'll come back and I'll do another season. So keep an eye out for that, and if they do some stuff that looks cool on Season 2, let me know in the comments section. And you never know, if I get enough people asking, I will come back and do a Season 2 tutorial for the first time. Alright, we are making our way back to the center of the ship. We're back in engineering. And I don't even know how many minutes we've gone out to. We've been doing this for a little while now, but we're going to be making our way up to the bridge finally. One cool thing about this ship that none of my ships have is that the Cerritos actually has 2 turbo lifts going up to the bridge. I just have one of them closed off. But they're both functional. I just closed one of them off because I wanted to show that doors, because that is the one thing the ship does not have is the automatic doors. I made it too thin. But it is what it is. I'm pretty happy with it. And let's pop into the bridge. And the bridge, I think it looks fantastic. The only thing the bridge doesn't have is the step down. But I've at least got the color of the blue that gives an impression of that step down. But it's just about spot on, at least what I could do, making as close as what I can to how it should look on the show. I think it's maybe like a hair smaller, but again, you know, I'm just working with the space I had available to me. But even with that space restrictions, I don't think the bridge looks bad at all. Combination of the layout and then the additional grid pixel blocks that I've added in, the computer consoles, I think the room looks fantastic. One thing that none of my ships have is that the bridge has its own conference room, and it also has its own captain's ready room. And this was something else I wanted to do to test out and practice for when I do the Enterprise D, because I'm hoping when I do come back around to doing the bridge on Enterprise D, that I'll have plenty of room that I can add both of these rooms, because they were such focal points on the show at different points in time in certain episodes. But I think the room looks pretty good. I used some screenshots from the Cerritos to build this room out. It's not perfect, but it doesn't look bad. We're going to pop over to conference room. Now, the conference room I took a liberty with because it's supposed to be going in a curve. But I mean, what can I say? I was just restricted on space, and, well, I shouldn't say I was restricted on space. I take that back. I had the space to go further back. But the problem is that when I built out the curve room, it looked like crap. I didn't like how it looked, and I just made the decision at that point. I was like, you know, if I just make this straight, it's going to fix that problem and it'll look nicer. The one thing that I did have to do, however, where I did make an exception, was that these windows are obviously just facades, and there was nothing I could do about that. It just is what it is. I tried to add in windows, but the problem is it completely changed the layout of the outside of the ship, and it was messing it up. So you can totally get away with doing stuff like that. We just, you know, whatever. We're just going to facade out the windows and use black, because you can make the argument that the ship's up in space, you know? But, or you could even make them blue if it's down in orbit. But it was something I wanted to try out, and it doesn't look bad. It doesn't look out of place, and I think it works. But it was definitely important to me to get both of these rooms in here, because even on the Cerritos, these rooms have been showcased on it, and it was important to me to get them out there. And of course, you can see we've got our front window looking out the front side of the ship. But I think that's going to about do it. We're going to make our way to the outside. If my guy will ever walk down the stairs, which, there we go. Problem I'm having with it, I need to add one more stair going up, and he'd come right down. Alright, we are going to make our way outside. I'm doing such a horrible job of not showing you the Enterprise D, because I know y'all just seen that. But that's about as close as you're going to get to it until this tutorial starts. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap us up. If those of you that stuck with me through this tutorial series that asked for the Cerritos, I built this ship for you guys. Everybody was asking me. Everyone that took the time to watch this tutorial series, commented, thank you so much for supporting the channel and watching my videos. You guys are so awesome. You really don't know what it means to me, and it's one of the reasons why I've been keeping this going. On top of the fact that I truly enjoy building these ships, I figure I'm going to be building them either way. I might as well make a video and show other people how to do it, and in doing so, show more people how to do it. Because when I started on YouTube, nobody had tutorials for these ships, let alone the Enterprise. So that's something I'm looking to change. But anyway, if you enjoyed this tour, be sure to check out the link below, because I built this whole thing from scratch, inside it out, which is what we've just been talking about. And you can watch that entire tutorial series where I show you how to do it. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. If you did enjoy this content, please help me out. Hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. New subscribers, don't forget to hit notifications on so you get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of those new videos, you can always catch my Starship Evo builds dropping on Mondays, my Minecraft videos dropping Tuesdays through Fridays. I am going to be taking a short hiatus from putting out my Minecraft videos until my Enterprise D tutorial starts. More than likely is either going to be this coming Tuesday or the following, but next Monday when the next Starship Evo build comes out, I'll talk about that. Anyway, I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. I hope everybody has a happy and safe week, and I'll catch you on the next episode.